Good afternoon, race fans. Welcome here as we get ready for knockout qualifying for our fourth race of our second season of the NNSCRA Hersheys Cup Series. We are here live from Atlanta Motor Speedway, getting ready for our first segment of our first round of qualifying, and I'm not certain why it went to that camera angle, but it did. Anyway, we are getting ready here for our first heat. 31 drivers involved. The top 12 speeds move on to the next round. And now we can start looking for some drivers that are heading out onto the racetrack. Dillon Young there in the 2. O'Neal Balvin still looking to make his Hersheys Cup Series debut. So far 0 for 4 in trying to qualify for points races this season. Right behind him, the 26 of Daniel Voiles, the Mercedes-Benz. For Heat 1, Heat 2, and Round 1, they'll have 10 minutes allotted them. Round 2, as was announced and done last week, 5 minutes. And then, of course, Round 3 will be 5 minutes, where the final 12 will move on, trying to start on the pole position for this week's race. Carson Scott moving his way around Trent Dunham. Carson Scott's had himself a pretty good start to the season, that 38 car. He was a former winner last season, too, at, I want to say Homestead, Miami, I think it was, where he ended up picking up his first and only win so far of the season, and of his career, I should say, in the Hersheys Cup. Trent Dunham running right behind him right now. Let's see who's been able to lay down the fastest lap so far. So far, it's actually been the 2 of Dillon Young. Of course, Young Motorsports just going to victory lane last week for the first time this season, with Levi McIntire the driver. Stephanie Gardner just jumped up to second right now. She and Dillon Young are the only two that have hit 26 sub-lap times. There is Dillon, working with the 70 of James Qualls, who started on the pole 2 weeks ago at Rockingham, UK. They're now catching up to rookie Garrett Sydnor in the 88. And now we have a new driver at the top of the leaderboard. Actually, 3 new drivers. Elijah Gordon is now the fastest on track. Seth Cole second, and Jessica Shelton in third. Dillon Young now dropped to fourth, even though he just ran his fastest lap of the session with a 26.782. Shaun Gallighan up to sixth. He'll be making his second start of the season here this week at Atlanta. Didn't have the best of runs last week. Got involved in an early wreck at Las Vegas, but looking to bounce back from that. And top of the boards, Jessica Shelton. 26.432, and this is a big pack of cars here. You got Zachary Stoltz leading it. Kat Tellier, Seth Cole, Joshua Srigley, Leon Alvarise. Thought I saw Benjamin Miles up there. Jake Baskinger, Shaun Gallighan, Jessica Shelton. This is where the speed is. This is where you may be seeing a lot of drivers moving into the next round of qualifying from. Shaun Gallighan actually just up to second place in speeds. Now up with a 26.452. Joshua Srigley made his first race of the season last week at Las Vegas. Trying to go back-to-back here in starts. Shaun Gallighan looking 3 wide here at Atlanta. This is what it's going to look like when the green flag waves for the main event. So we're getting a little early taste of it here in this first segment of our first round of qualifying. Right now, 4 out of the top 5, actually the top 4 in speeds are running in this pack right now. Shelton, Gallighan, Gordon, and Cole. Next highest in this pack is 8th place, and that is the 35 of Kat Tellier, who is right now running just behind the Superman Chevrolet there, head of this pack. The other drivers who currently would move into the next round would be Dillon Young, 5th, James Qualls, 6th, Garrett Sydnor 7th, Brandon Gonzales, Ryan Madden, Mathew Daleo, and Zachary Fitzwater would move into the next round. Out of those drivers, your non-chartered cars would be Gordon, Cole, Sydnor, Tellier, and Daleo. That is 5 drivers that are non-chartered cars that would move into the next round of qualifying. It's not over yet, though. A little less than 4.5 minutes left in this qualifying session. Right now, right in your screen, are your top 3 fastest cars: the 02, the 48, and the 44. And the 80 just ahead is 4th fastest. Drivers right now appearing to kind of just be out there and logging laps, which with the older tires is not going to help you lay down really, really fast laps. So right now, things kind of at a status quo. And Zachary Fitzwater hopes it stays that way. Someone just came on track. I think that was Keith Batson. Yep, just came off pit road. Right now, 25th fastest. There is Austin Mongold, raced last week. But right now, he is 24th fastest. Kyle Matthews, right now, is 28th fastest, but he's a chartered car. He'll make the show. Cody Llamas, our new points leader. Well, actually, no. I think he lost the points lead to Grayson Acevedo last week. But he's up there in points nonetheless. I believe he flipped last week at Las Vegas. Right now, he's 21st fastest on the speed charts. There is Stephanie Gardner, just 1 position shy of making it in the next round. She's 13th fastest right now. She has to beat a 26.876. Leon Alvarise is close. So is Anthony McCrury. And last week's winner, Levi McIntire, 26.940. That's about roughly 6/10 off what he needs to be. Or 6/100 actually. Looking at James Qualls, he will move into the next round at this current point in time. Right now, 6th fastest. And actually, we have a new 13th place car. Keith Batson jumps up there with a 26.880. Which is 2 1,000 slower than Zachary Fitzwater. So Batson just needs to step it up just a little bit more to make it into the next round. Moves Stephanie Gardner down to 14th fastest. There's Brandon Gonzales, the 23, right now 9th fastest. And Garrett Sydnor, who ended up making the Daytona 500, ran really well there. It looks like he'll move on to the next round of qualifying. Right now, 7th fastest for the driver out of CJ Racing. Just saw Mathew Daleo not too far ahead. There he is. He was close to making the race last week at Las Vegas, but due to so many cars making it into round 2 that were non-chartered machines, Mathew Daleo moved on to the next round but did not move on to the main event. Right now, 11th fastest, which would move him into the next round of qualifying again, but he's going to definitely have to make sure he steps up his speeds when the green flag waves to start off round 2 to make sure he makes his first start of the season. Just bypassed last week's winner, Levi McIntire, right now 17th fastest on the scoring charts. Just about a minute remaining. And the driver that's on pins and needles right now would be the 76. And there he is, Zachary Fitzwater, hoping nobody could beat a 26.878 with 50 seconds remaining. Fitzwater went to victory lane 2 weeks ago. And he will not move on to the next round, at least for right now. We have a new driver up to 12th, and that was Leon Alvarise. 26.857. He beat it by about 13 1,000ths to move to 12th place. So now he is the bubble driver with about 20 seconds remaining. So at this current point in time, it looks like none of our previous race winners this season are going to be moving on to the next round of qualifying. Kyle Matthews, Levi McIntire, and now Zachary Fitzwater, all currently outside the top 12 in speeds. And we've got zeros on the clock, but wait a minute. Alvarise is out. Srigley, last minute, is in. Joshua Srigley in the 47, 26.839, just jumped up to 12th. He moves into the next round. Alvarise is eliminated. And wow, about 2 1,000ths slower that lap for Srigley. Tried to get himself a little bit of insurance. This is what I love about these knockout qualifying sessions. It seems like right in the closing stages, that's when drivers really lay down those fast lap times. There's a lot of last-minute drivers. And Srigley tries to make a case for himself to make his second start of the season. Remember, Srigley was a 3-time winner last season. Now a non-chartered go-or-go-home driver. But right now, he's in a good spot to make his way into the next round. And the session is complete. So the drivers that will be moving on to the next round: Jessica Shelton, the fastest; Shaun Gallighan, second; Elijah Gordon, Seth Cole, Dillon Young, James Qualls, Garrett Sydnor, Kat Tellier, Brandon Gonzales, Ryan Madden, Mathew Daleo, and Joshua Srigley will all move into the next round. As far as non-chartered cars, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 non-chartered cars moving into the next round from round 1, which means we can only have one non-chartered car move into the next round from segment 2, from heat 2, or else we're going to have some drivers, much like last week, that are non-chartered cars miss the race even though they move into the second round of qualifying. Drivers that will not be making the start here this week include Keith Batson, Stephanie Gardner, Aaron Henderson, Austin Mongold, Zachary Stoltz, O'Neal Balvin, and that will be it for the drivers in this heat that will not be taking the green and starting this week's race at Atlanta. So we have our 12 drivers from our first half of our first round of qualifying. Let's head now for our second heat and see who's going to join them. So we'll get ready now for our second heat of our first round of qualifying. 6 non-chartered cars move into the next round from the first heat. And we'll have to see how many non-chartered cars race their way into the top 12 in speeds in this heat. And it could come down to the wire once again between non-chartered cars of who's going to make the race and who isn't. A couple of drivers coming off pit road whose teammates had very fast lap times and are moving on to the next round. Chris Dodd in the 08. Charles Sandfer in the 03. Chris Dodd's teammate Garrett Sydnor was, I believe, 4th or 6th fastest in the first half of the first round of qualifying. And Charles Sandfer's teammate, Jessica Shelton, was the fastest in the first half of the first round of qualifying. So we'll see if their two teammates might be able to do something here. Charles Sandfer getting a nice slipstream run down the front straightaway off the back of the Wrangler Chevrolet. We'll see if that helps him in his lap time. His first lap time going to be scored this next time around. Both of these drivers are chartered machines nonetheless, so they'll both make the race regardless. And let's see what the first official lap time laid down in this session is going to be by Charles Sandfer. 27.163. So almost to the 26s, but not quite. His teammate Jessica Shelton was one of only 2 drivers who hit the 26s, I believe it was, in the first round, and that was both Shelton and Shaun Gallighan. We saw Kyle Keith in the 42 car is in this half of this round of qualifying, and so we'll see if maybe the Sega Motorsports engines that help get Shaun Gallighan his fast lap time might be able to help Kyle Keith make this race. Just ahead there is the guy who comes into this main event as the points leader, Grayson Acevedo in the 66. Going to stop for just a quick second, folks. I got to take a phone call, and then we'll be right back for our continuation of qualifying here at Atlanta. Welcome back to qualifying here at Atlanta. You haven't missed much. Fastest on track right now is Kyle Keith in the 42 with a 26.755. That was nearly just beaten, though, by Charles Sandfer. And now it has been beaten. 26.605 for John Arndt and the 24 car. Getting a nice slipstream there off the back of John Andrews, Cole Baker, and Tim Walsh. And Andrews is coming to pit road. That's going to slow up the lap time of the 24. I'd watch for maybe Nathan Hudson to get a good lap time here. And nope, not good enough to move him up there. And Kyle Keith back to the top of the board again. It's fine where that 42 is on track. There he is, working by the 16 of Dallas McIntosh, and Joshua Michaels just jumped up to second fastest in the 10 car for Rage Motorsports. Zach Rogers made his Hersheys Cup Series debut last week at Las Vegas, and right now the 39 car is running 5th, so he's got a great opportunity to move on to the next round and try and make his second straight race. Team that has definitely been doing very well this season has been Bulldog Motorsports. Zach Rogers made last week's race. Looks like he might make this race. Of course, the consistency of his teammate Grayson Acevedo has put Acevedo to the top of the point standings. Speaking of to the top, Joshua Michaels, that single car race team out of Rage Motorsports, is now top of the leaderboard. 26.546. His fastest lap time. Right behind him, 4th fastest on track. That's James Richardson in the 11. Dougie Shears, the rookie, going to pit road. So right now, as things stand, with about half of the time in this session gone, the drivers that would move on to the next round would be Joshua Michaels, Kyle Keith, John Arndt, James Richardson, Jason Heywood now has jumped up to 5th as he's in this single file formation. Then Zach Rogers, Zack Flickinger, Jonny Gardner, JT Bryant, Holden Gluba, James McLeod, and the final transfer spot into the next round of qualifying is currently held by one of the first cars that went out on track, Charles Sandfer. A 26.789 is what they are trying to beat to make their way into the show, and there is still more than 4 minutes left in this session, so Charles Sandfer can't rest on his laurels just yet. See if anybody tops it this time out of this group. Not yet. We've got about maybe 2 or 3 different groups of cars here all together at certain portions of this racetrack. Right now, though, none of them been able to produce enough speed to get somebody up into the top 12. You got quite a gap there. 26.789 from 12th back to 13, 26.851. That's about 3/10, or 3/100ths actually, separation. James McLeod, he hasn't made a points-paying race since the season-opening Daytona 500. Right now, he's also in a precarious position, just like Charles Sandfer. Right now, he's 11th fastest. He's only got 5 1/1000ths on Charles Sandfer. And hold on 1 second. I got to take my headset off. My dog's just pulled my power cord out. Give me 1 second. Puppies, gotta love them. So that looked like anything's really changed since I was gone. Right now, the driver trying to race his way in would be the 84 of Joe Rockingham. And his last lap was about 5/10 slower than his fastest lap of this session. He's got to beat a 26.789 This time by, his lap time was a 27.255, so definitely not good enough yet. But like we saw in the first half of our qualifying session, we could end up seeing something happen here in the very late closing stages. We saw two drivers jump up into the top 12 in the closing stages of that session. Somebody might have come to pit road, might have gotten their car adjusted, and been able to put together something that'll get them into the next round. Speaking of getting into the next round, Holden Gluba, I think this might be the first time the 55 car is en route to moving on to the next round. Holden Gluba has failed to make a start this season. Right now, looking very good. That 55 Aaron's Dream Machine out of Joe Gibbs Racing. We know how Joe Gibbs Racing's had some pretty remarkable stories this season. Cody Llamas running really well in the point standings. Marty Johnson had that great run in the Daytona 500. Holden Gluba trying here to get at least 3 of the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas into this week's main event. 40 seconds and counting on the clock. Charles Sandfer, he would love to be able to join teammate Jessica Shelton in the second round to try and move into a position to start on the pole position for this week's race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. He's just hoping no one can beat a 26.789 with about 15 and counting seconds remaining. Those that are fairly close, less than 2/10 back. You got Joe Rockingham, Tim Walsh, Dallas McIntosh, Michael Norman. 3 of those 4 are chartered rides going to make the show for Joe Rockingham. This comes down between whether he's even going to make the race or not. If he can't beat Charles Sandfer's lap time, move into the next round. Zeros on the clock, and now we go down to the wind down clock. 10 seconds on that. Looks like Charles Sandfer might be in a good spot here. No one's been close this whole session ever since Sandfer laid down that lap to being able to beat him. Oh, and as soon as I say that, Holden Gluba into the top 12. Sandfer eliminated. Wait, it wasn't Gluba. Who was it? Someone jumped up there. Was it Michael Norman? It was. Michael Norman out of nowhere with a 26.655 jumped up to 4th place on the charts. And that eliminated Charles Sandfer from moving on to the next round of qualifying. So Sandfer will be starting the race, I believe, from the... I think it's going to be the rough... Well, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, where he's going to be starting. Somewhere around 26th place, though. And wow, last minute for Michael Norman to move into the next round. So the drivers that will move into the next round from this round of qualifying, or from this heat I should say, are Joshua Michaels, Kyle Keith, John Arndt, Michael Norman, James Richardson, Jason Heywood, Zach Rogers, Zack Flickinger, Jonny Gardner, JT Bryant, Holden Gluba, and James McLeod gets the final transfer spot into the next round. Drivers that officially will not be starting this race when the green flag waves are Joe Rockingham, Marie Minobi, John Andrews, Dougie Shears, Marty Johnson, Pichu London, Noah Kars, Davey Johnson, Nathan Hudson, and Rocco Twyman. So those are the drivers that have failed to make the race so far. For the non-chartered cars that made the race, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them by my calculations. So 6 made it in the first heat, 5 make it in the second heat, which means 4 drivers, regardless of the fact that they've moved on to the second round of qualifying, will be going home by the time we finish up this second round of Knockout Q. So stay tuned. We're going to get ready now for our remaining 24 drivers to head out on track for their 5-minute round 2 qualifying session. 5 minutes on the clock. Drivers going to have to make the most of that time, and already a couple drivers coming off pit road. Go or go homer Garrett Sydnor, as well as the 70 of James Qualls for Sydnor, and 10 other drivers. Comes down to 7 spots. 11 total drivers, 6 from Heat 1, 5 from Heat 2. Moving here into the second round of qualifying as non-chartered go-or-go-home drivers. They must be within the top 7 non-chartered speeds in this session to make the race. You got to wonder how much team information is passed on between all of these teams. Garrett Sydnor was up in the top 10 for speeds in the first heat. His teammate Chris Dodd in the 08 was the slowest of everyone on track in the second heat of qualifying. So Dodd will be starting all the way at the tail end of the field in 42nd place. Sydnor just ran the second fastest lap. I believe Qualls might have just beaten him. Yes, he did. 27.271, the lap time first laid down by James Qualls, who's trying to qualify for his second pole of the season. He qualified for the pole 2 weeks ago at Rockingham, UK. So far, our pole sitters this season were Joshua Michaels at Daytona, James Qualls at Rockingham, UK, and then Levi McIntire, of course, going coast to coast last week at Las Vegas. James Qualls trying to become the first repeat pole sitter, only 4 races into the season. But this is not the final round of qualifying. We still are going to have one more round where the top 12 speeds from this round move in, and then they will battle to start on the pole. Only 9 cars, well actually only 8 cars, have officially laid down a lap time. There you see Ryan Madden coming on track. Holden Gluba is yet to be scored for his first official lap. JT Bryant now up to second fastest. Now Norman up to second fastest. That 3 car, I'm telling you what, he is one of the sleepers in this field. There's no doubt about that. James Qualls just hit the 26.8, 26.6 for JT Bryant. And now he's top of the leaderboard, 26.694 for the driver out of Young Motorsports. And trying to become the second straight Young Motorsports driver to start on the pole position. Levi McIntire did it last week. And Zach Rogers up to second. Jason Heywood now jumps to second. They are swapping positions around like crazy right now. Now it's Mathew Daleo up to second place. And it's interesting that so many of those names, Rogers, Heywood, Daleo, are go-or-go-home non-chartered cars. They know this is their opportunity. This is their moment to make it into the top 7 in non-chartered car speed. Let's see this time by if anybody improves their lap time out of this group. Doesn't much look like it. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 non-chartered cars in the top 10 right now. The final one would be Seth Cole, 27.009. James McLeod right now would be out of the show, 27.018. He is 9 1/1000ths out of the main event right now. Doesn't mean it's over for him, though. Let's find that 51 car. There he is. He just beat his lap time. Did he beat Seth Cole, though? No, he didn't. He was about 4 1/1000ths slower that time. He needs to beat a 27.009. And Mathew Daleo has jumped to the top of the leaderboard, trying to ensure himself a spot in starting this race. Let's see if McLeod can chip off about 5 1/1000ths off his lap time, this time by... That time he was about a 10th slower. Mathew Daleo, though. How about that car out of Srigley Motorsports? Remember last week, he made it into the second round of qualifying, got eliminated. He's not going to open up the opportunity for that to happen this week. Top of the leaderboard at 26.554. One of the fastest speeds we've seen here today. JT Bryant second. Then you got Heywood, Qualls, and Gluba. Not seeing a whole lot of speed so far out of Jessica Shelton. She just ran her fastest lap, 27.033. But that's only 17th fastest out of the 24 cars that transferred. And remember, she and Shaun Gallighan were both top of the leaderboard in the first session. Shaun Gallighan hasn't done much better. Right now, he's 23rd fastest. His fastest lap, a 27.2. And you can see how drivers up in the top 10 have hit at least 26.9. So not really good right at the moment for both Shelton or Gallighan, who were two of the fastest cars in our first heat of our first round of qualifying. And the session's complete. Here we go. Who's transferring in? Mathew Daleo, he'll make the show. So will Heywood. So will Gluba, Rogers, Keith, Sydnor, and the final transfer spot will go to Seth Cole by 4/1000ths of a second over James McLeod. Only, 17/1000ths over Elijah Gordon. Wow. That was really close there at the end between them. But the 12 drivers that move on to battle for the pole: Mathew Daleo, JT Bryant, Jason Heywood, James Qualls, Holden Gluba, Zach Rogers, Kyle Keith, Garrett Sydnor, Jonny Gardner, James Richardson, Michael Norman, and John Arndt. For 3 drivers, they'll be making their official first starts of the season in the Hersheys Cup: Daleo, Heywood, and Gluba. Drivers that officially have DNQ'd from this race will be James McLeod, Elijah Gordon, Joshua Srigley, and Kat Tellier. So let's move on to our final round of qualifying and see who's going to start on the pole position for our 4th race of the season in the Hersheys Cup Series. So we will get ready now to find out who will be starting on the pole position for this week's race. Right now, we have an opportunity for a repeat pole sitter, James Qualls, qualifying his way into the final round of qualifying. And ironically enough, this is actually a first, I believe, in Hersheys Cup Series as far as the knockout qualifying since it was enforced. We have one driver who is a non-chartered car who is in the race, that being Seth Cole, but Seth Cole is not in this final round of qualifying. He was 13th fastest in the round 2 qualifying session, so he will not take part in trying to start on the pole position. So that's rather ironic. I believe that every single time we've had our 7 drivers that are non-chartered cars make the race, they've all ended up making it into the final round of qualifying. So this is actually a first. James Richardson for Joe Gibbs Racing out on the racetrack. He's the one of 2 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas that have made it into the final round. Holden Gluba, who will be making his Hersheys Cup Series Season 2 debut. Former winner last season at Watkins Glen. There you see the 55 now coming out on track. And then making his Hersheys Cup Series debut in a points-paying race will be Jason Heywood in the 72 car out of KAB Racing. Richardson now on the clock. This will be the first official lap time for the 11. It was a 27.277 that last time by. Probably going to hit the high 26s on this next time around. Talked about 2 Joe Gibbs Racing cars making the final round. How about I lost what it was called. I think it's Joanna Atwood. I got to look at it. I forgot what it was called. It is, yes, Joanna Atwood Motorsports. 2 of their cars, Jonny Gardner and James Qualls, both making it into the next round of qualifying. So, great runs for both of them. You got Sega Motorsports, Kyle Keith. Michael Norman Motorsports, Michael Norman. Srigley Motorsports is Mathew Daleo. Young Motorsports is JT Bryant. CJ Racing's Garrett Sydnor. There's a lot of drivers here that could do something to start on the pole. Right now, the fastest car on track at this point in time is the 70 of James Qualls, 27.016. And just to show you how track conditions and everything changed, our fastest 2 drivers in our first round of qualifying, Jessica Shelton, Joshua Michaels, did not move on into this final round to battle for the pole. Speaking of the pole right now would go to the 11 of James Richardson. Got a nice slipstream off the back of the 24 of John Arndt, 26.9 flat. For Richardson, JT Bryant just got knocked off the outside of the front row by James Qualls. Qualls now with a 26.968. Bryant with a 26.982. So could James Richardson be the first Toyota pole sitter this season? So far, Chevy has 2 poles. Ford has 1. Toyota trying to get their first this season. Also, in our first 3 races, Chevy swept the front row at both Daytona and Rockingham, UK. Ford swept the front row last week at Las Vegas. So Holden Gluba is the only other Toyota in this field that made it to this final round of qualifying. Gluba's got to step it up if Toyota's going to sweep the front row. There's Mathew Daleo. Mission successful for him. Last week just missed out on making the main event, even though he made it into the second round of qualifying. But this week he said, no, I'm not going to be denied. And he has made it into his first start of the season. There's Michael Norman, who just barely slivered his way up into the second round of qualifying and then had a pretty stellar outing in the second round. Now moves into the final round of Q, and right now 7th fastest. Fastest lap, 27.129 for the 3-car. Holden Gluba's trying. Chipping away little by little. Was 5th fastest last time by. Now 4th fastest, 27.014. Trying to get up there to start in the front row with his teammate James Richardson. Got a ways still to go, though. Still has to bypass JT Bryant and James Qualls in lap time. Let's see this lap by, right in the draft of John Arndt, 26.982. That actually ties him with JT Bryant for 3rd. But because JT Bryant is a chartered car, that would mean JT would actually start 3rd. Gluba would start in 4th, but Gluba still trying to fight. This might be the last time that Gluba's going to get a timed lap. I don't know if they're even going to score it. 6 seconds on cooldown, and no, lap time was not even counted. So James Richardson, and as soon as I go to him, we end up having the thing go off. So James Richardson, for the first time this season, captures the pole position and the first pole for Toyota. James Qualls will start alongside of him in 2nd. Row 2 will be JT Bryant and Holden Gluba. Row 3, Jonny Gardner and Jason Heywood. Row 4, Michael Norman and Zach Rogers. Row 5, Mathew Daleo John Arndt. And row 6 will be Garrett Sydnor and Kyle Keith. A lot of Cinderella stories here. Gluba, Heywood, and Mathew Daleo making their first starts of the season. For those other rookies, Rogers, Sydnor, and Keith, they're only making their second starts of the season. Keith and Rogers raced last week at Las Vegas. Sydnor raced the Daytona 500. So we'll see what they can make of that opportunity here at Atlanta. Thank you all so much for watching today's knockout qualifying session. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to become part of the crew today. If you look down in the description, it will show you your starting lineup for this week's race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Make sure that you don't click it before this session's over, else you're going to get spoilers. So anyway, James Richardson, congratulations on the pole position. And we will see you guys as we get ready to go points racing for our 4th race of the season here at Atlanta on the NNSCRA Sports Channel. Offline racing at its best.